webinar event that we have twice a month. So you'll all be invited to the next one coming up. Today's event and the next event is a CEU presentation. If you didn't put your CEU number in when you registered, you can email Tracy Kahn directly. We'll make sure that you get your credit. We always get asked if the presentation can be sent out. So we've decided to record every presentation, and it will be available for the recording, but we don't send out the PowerPoint presentation. As we go through this and you have questions and answers, just so you don't forget them, write them down in the chat box at the bottom, and I'll go through them at the end and make sure that we get through every single question. There'll be about 15-20 minutes for some Q&A at the end. We always make sure we got a bit of a discussion near the end. Today's presentation has an element of getting your involvement through Mentimeter. So if you want to open up your phone and go to menti.com, that's all you got to do is menti.com. You'll be prompted for a code, which Scott will be giving at the beginning of this presentation. All right, so without further ado, I will introduce our presenter here. So Scott works for Technion. He's been working there since 2014, and his main role at Technion is to direct Technion's education team, engagement, and collaboration efforts, with a focus on key topics including meaningful innovation, the evolution of learning, campus-wide, this is the first time I'll say this word, pedagogy, development, did I get that right, Tracy? Design thinking and effective evaluation, procure creation. Scott collaborates with both design firms and universities to develop a clear and precise understanding of their goals. Scott is the author of this CEU titled Designing for Health, Creating a Happy and Healthy Campus, and the author and lead facilitator of the CEU entitled Mind Over Space, Neurodiversity and Learning Spaces of the Future, created in partnership with Thomas Jefferson University. I will hand it over to Scott. Thank you so much. And we will go through the Q&A at the end. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thanks, Nolan. Thanks, Tracy. Thanks, everybody, for attending. Great attendance on a Friday afternoon. For me, I'm coming live to you from Connecticut. I could complain about the weather, but from talking to Tracy earlier in the week, it's a fraction of how cold it is up there. So we're in like the teens in Fahrenheit here with some beautiful snow on the ground. But you're much colder than we are. But welcome to my home. Welcome to my home office. And we'll get started on the presentation. But thanks all for attending. I put into the chat box the link to Menti and the code, so you can get started and get into that. But let me share my screen, and this is always that embarrassing time when I have either queued up or you get to see a little bit behind the scenes of how bad my desktop is. So let me close that and make this full screen. I think we're good to go. All right, okay, so hopefully you can see what's up there. Present. There we go. All right, so you should be seeing my daughter Scarlett's beautiful face taken from a couple of years ago with her Design for Health, Creating a Happy, Healthy Campus, right? So we're going to be talking a lot today, and I know Nolan promised about 10 to 15 or 20 minutes of Q&A at the end of this. I'm going to be pushing that envelope at the end and give you time, but I promise I will stick around afterwards if there are question and answers, if I go over or cut you short on that Q&A at the end there. But let's dive right in. I want to thank Technion Lumen Studio TK, obviously, for sponsoring this. And again, thanks Nolan and the team for putting this together as well. All right, so if you're on Menti, you can answer this question for me first and foremost. Where are you working today? Are you working from the home office, the office? Maybe you're working from a co-working space. Maybe you're working from some type of hybrid solution. But let me know where you're working from. It looks like a majority of you are working from the home office, just like I am, or have been since March of last year, right? And continue to work from that home office space. And the code up top, if you're just joining us from, but jump into Menti, we've got we'll be using Menti throughout the presentation today, but it's up there. It's menti.com, the code 5826615. All right, so majority of you are working from the home office, with only 5 of you working from the office and 3 of you working from a kind of hybrid home office. You're probably working from many different spaces in your home office. Okay. All right, another question for you. If you can look at the eggs, right? Don't forget to look at the eggs on your phone. They do play a role in the question, right? But how are you feeling today? We ask this question all the time, and while you answer this question, right? It's sometimes a pointless question, right? We typically say good when asked. We oftentimes answer without even thinking about it. If I wanted to get a real answer from you, could you really give one, right? Could you describe your current emotional state without a generic word like good, fine, or okay? In fact, those are the top 3 answers always given, right? Even now, we write emails like, I hope this email finds you well, or, how are you doing today in your emails? Do we really want to pull that information out, right? A majority of you are feeling good, right? What does good mean? Like, could you describe it a little bit more? Some of you are feeling it's complicated, right? And 2 of you are feeling like our good friend, the second egg over there, right? What happens if you answer this question, or dive a little bit deeper? How does your office, your home office, your workspace, your hybrid space where you're working today, how does that space make you feel? What are some words that you would use to describe that space? Oh, good. Positive words. Motivated, happy, efficient, comfortable. Good. Some not so good words. I see hectic, cluttered, isolated. Yeah, these are good words, right? These words are emotions. These words are better than good, fine, and okay. You're finding your voice. Calm, efficient, spacious. Somebody's lucky with a spacious one, right? Meh, that's another one. Bland, right? These are some good words. The most common used word, as we can see from our word bubble, is comfortable. I like the word happy, right? And productive, right? These are great words to be using and good information. These are emotions, right? A majority of these words are describing emotions, right? And emotions are what we're going to be diving into today. Emotions are our feelings, right? They're biologically innate. They're universal to all humans, and they can be displayed through these facial expressions. In fact, fun fact for you today, if there's one thing that you take out of this presentation, is that there are 42 muscles in your face that allow us to reflect feelings, and that all humans can understand and recognize, right? For many centuries, we've understood that these emotions and mental states, that we refer to them emotions, right? And that they were actually typically called passions or affections. In fact, we really didn't start studying them until about the mid 18th century, and deeper into the 19th century, when Scottish philosopher Thomas Browne was the first to propose these emotions as theoretical categories, which opened the door for scientific research, right? We weren't really eager to study it or to define it, and it has pretty much stayed ever since. In fact, it's hard for people to define it. We've asked people to define these emotion states before. We know that the categories of theories of emotions, where do they come from? Like, some would say that they're physiological, the responses within the body that cause emotion. They're neurological, they're responses within our brains that cause emotions. They're cognitive, they're thoughts that form emotions. We understand that they're intrinsical states of feelings that stem from our surroundings or moods. There's a sensitivity to events. They're powerful internal sensations that color our very experiences. That's all the stuff that we use to describe these emotions. We understand that there are many different emotions, but if we had to boil them down, right, there would be probably 6 that all of us can understand. And hopefully you've seen this movie before, but for the sake of boiling it down, there are 6, right? There are sadness, anger, disgust, fear, joy, and the one that they're saving for the sequel, surprise, right? Surprise is the 6th emotion that all of us can understand. But for the sake of today, we're going to talk about joy and happiness, my favorite from the movie. And emotions are important, right? Emotions actually help us understand a lot. They help us understand a lot about the world. The Gallup actually has done and does year over year a positivity and negativity experience index, and it measures life's intangibles, the feelings and emotions. And it gives us an insight to people's daily experiences and offering leaders across the world the insight into health of their societies that they can't gather from just the economic looks alone. This is the Gallup poll from 2019, looking at the positivity index and the percentage of something who learned people who learned something. They looked at 144 countries. They studied over 200,000 respondents, and what they found out was something interesting. The positivity index looked the same. 71% was the average across the globe from 2018 to 2019. But the interesting thing that they found out was that there was a drop in this, and in the fact that somebody learned something the day before, right? So it went from 51% to 49% responded that they had learned something across the world. So we lost the ability to learn something. The negativity index actually grew, right? So in that same Gallup poll, in 2019, pre-pandemic, more than 1 in 3 people said that they experienced a lot of worry, a lot of stress, and 3 in 10 experienced a lot of physical pain in the day before taking the response. And at least 1 in 5 experienced sadness or anger. Experiences of worry, stress, pain, and anger remained unchanged from the previous year, but they were at record highs. And what was interesting is from this poll is that the percentage of worldwide experience of sadness had risen by 2 points over the prior year. In the US, where I'm from, right, this was pre-pandemic, actually came out that it was sadness was on a significant rise and rising into 2020. Right? The data suggests that people in many countries around the world entered the pandemic in an already heightened negative state, which didn't bode well for the post-pandemic lives. And in the US alone, that we were sadder than ever before. We had increased from only by almost 4 percentage points over our sadness in the previous day. We've got a problem. Right? And can space really do something about it, right? Can space make a difference in combating these issues? And we think so, and I hopefully most of you on this call think so as well, right? If we take this kind of human-centered design approach about creating space that can space inspire and make us feel more creative and empower us to do things differently, can that change our emotions? Can that change and combat some of the things we're going to talk about later on? Can the power of design be used to produce interiors that evoke positive experience, that elicit uplifting feelings and responses among individuals, especially in learning spaces? We look at something like this. This is at WPI's campus in Worcester, Massachusetts, right? This is a space that exists on campus that they just built, right? That it's their Foisey Innovation Center. Pre-pandemic, about a year before the pandemic, it's supposed to be this beacon on campus, right? What is this space supposed to evoke? Imagine the emotions of the students walking into a space like this. What is this supposed to be? It's totally different on campus, right? You walk into a space, it's open, it's movement, there's all this stuff happening inside of it. It's supposed to be creating and making space. Can we start to design spaces like this? What are the emotions that we're supposed to be evoking throughout this space? We're supposed to make spaces feel happy, right? Some of you even wrote that about your own personal space moments ago. And happiness is important, right? We're wired to pursue happiness and not only enjoy it, but actually want more of it. We crave happiness. Happiness is the central criterion for good mental health. Happiness is associated with a wide range of tangible benefits, including enhanced physical health, superior coping skills, better social skills, and even vocational success and longer life, right? We need happiness. So I ask you this: what factors affect student, faculty, and staff performance on a college campus? Right? If we know that we want more happiness, what factors do you think might be affecting their performance on a college campus? Sound, great answer. Yep, it's going to affect performance. Light, Privacy is going to affect performance, distraction, the environment. Yep, these are all great factors. Give me some more. Space planning. Temperature. Yep. Light's the biggest response right now. Light's gonna, yeah, light will play certainly play a factor in. Yeah. The elements, okay. Yeah, these are all great factors affecting student performance on a college campus, but we're missing one that I just gave you moments ago, right? Emotions, right? If we look at this here, this was taken from the American College Health Association's National College Health Assessment, right? And they were reporting the factors that affected individual academic performance on a college campus. What calls out to you? What are the top 4 that you see? Hopefully you're screaming at your muted computer right now and you're going, it's stress, Scott. It's sleep difficulties. It's anxiety and depression, right? Those are the top 4. Stress at 31%, anxiety at 23%, sleep difficulties at 20%, and depression at 15%. Those are the top 4 factors that affected student performance on a college campus, right? Academic performance on a college campus. Mental illness, right? Those are mental illnesses. Right? Mental illness is a huge factor that's occurring at college campuses right now. And this was that survey was done pre-pandemic. We're doing surveys right now, or they're doing surveys right now that are post-pandemic or during the pandemic. And trust me, it's a bigger problem. In a national survey conducted by the National Alliance on Mental Illness, what percentage of college students dropped out because of mental illness? What do you think? What percentage of college dropouts were dropping out because of mental illness? Majority of you are saying 35%. The correct answer is 65%, right? 65% of the students that drop out of college are dropping out because of mental illnesses. The American College Health Association surveyed 65,000 students at 92 different schools, right? And found that 40% of college students said that they had felt so depressed in the prior year that it was difficult for them to function. 61% of the students surveyed felt that they had felt an overwhelming anxiety during that same time period, right? The Chronicle of Higher Education recently conducted a survey and in partnership with Healthy Minds, and they studied over 300,000 students, right? And found that 40% of post-secondary students, some 8 million students nationwide, reported experiencing significant mental health problems in 2019, prior to the pandemic. That same survey found that 60% of college undergraduates have been having increasing difficulty accessing mental health care prior to going online, right? In a post survey, right, the impact of COVID-19 on college mental health students dropped that number down to 1 in 5 college students saying that mental health had worsened under COVID-19. Right? And that 80% of college students who reported COVID-19 has negatively impacted their health. Not surprisingly enough, that the Association for University and College Counseling Center surveyed recently found this, that they compared the first 4 weeks of school in the start of 2020 to the start of 2019, and found some surprising information that 57% of universities reported an increase in student anxiety, an 81% increase in student loneliness, a 36% increase in student bereavement and grief, and a 40% increase in depression. Right? We've got a huge problem right now going into once we, especially with this pandemic. It was such a big problem that the college and university professors took note, right? Finally, we're starting to take note, with 53% of them ranking student mental health as the top concern, and the second concern was the concern of these people, the faculty and staff. Because it's not only just a student problem, it's also a faculty and staff problem, right? According to a Gallup poll prior to the pandemic, what percentage of workers are considered disengaged prior to the pandemic? And disengagement, Gallup rated disengagement as actionable workplace elements as proven linkages. So opportunities for workers to do what they do best, opportunities to develop their job skills, and having their opinions, for examples, was their level of engagement. I'll tell you, 2 of you have it correct. 3 of you now have it correct. Yeah, it's 86%, right? This was prior to the pandemic. 86% of the workforce was considered disengaged. Now, they didn't specifically look at faculty and staff on college campuses, but look, even if this is 10% at colleges and universities, we've got a major problem. These are teaching our kids how to be better humans. Like this is a big problem, especially for colleges and universities, right? And now we have even a bigger problem post-pandemic, right? We've got 40% of faculty considering leaving academia because of issues on the new teaching modes and not understanding how to teach, and secondary trauma, and having to deal with students' trauma and their stresses, and the loss of campus community. I don't know what the numbers are for Canada right now, but I'll tell you right now, in the US, we're over 650 lost jobs in the college and universities alone. So they've lost their connection to one another, right? And they don't understand what's next, right? They're questioning what's next and how difficult their jobs are going to be, right? They expect constant change in teaching modality and pedagogy and class sizes, and they don't understand what's next, so they don't know what's coming. But don't worry, right? There's hope. There's a lot to process there, but there's hope. Don't worry about it, right? And there's 3 things we're going to talk about for the rest of this, that we're going to talk about all the positive stuff. We're going to talk about the development of strong, positive interpersonal relationships and why that matters and what that's going to do. We're going to talk about the designing for movement and how that's going to be helpful and why you should concentrate on that. And we're going to talk about designing for good health and well-being and why that's going to matter too. So don't worry, you're the hope. You are the hope, right? You've got a chance to make a massive impact on both the students, the faculty, and the staff as they return to campus through your designs. Okay. All right. Do me a favor. I can't see you because I'm on like a mini camera here, but close your eyes, right? Close your eyes and think back to your favorite memory at college or university, right? Think back to your happiest time back on campus. And once you have that memory, once you've got that favorite time, get familiar with your surroundings. Get familiar with what it looks like. And once you've got familiar with your surroundings, look at your phone and tell me where that memory was. Was your favorite memory in a classroom? Was it outside? Was it in a dorm or res hall? Was it in the library or dining hall? Was it in a sporting event? Was it at graduation? Was it some other location? Where was your happy memory? Majority of you, it was outside. I sometimes put design studio on here if we have a lot of designers on the call. So I apologize. I didn't make that edit before, but maybe you might be considering Classroom that, right? All right, so majority of you are telling me it was outside. Second one, Classroom, that's the second most popular one. That's awesome. That rarely comes up as the second one, I'll tell you. Sporting event, in the US, sporting event is probably the most popular one. And we do have some graduations as the most popular ones here, right? But if I were to ask you, what are some words that you would use to describe those spaces, right? Where your happy memories were, your outside spaces, your classroom spaces, your other spaces. What are some words that you would use to describe those spaces? Okay, they're community spaces. They're the quad, right? Awesome. They're sunny spaces. Another bring back to light, right? They're freedom spaces, right? They're freeing spaces. They're bright and sunny and collaborative and transition spaces. Great words. They're gathering with other spaces. Good. Oh, I see my magic word right there. It's going to get a little bit, it's gotten a little bit bigger. Okay. I'll save it for the next slide. Awesome words. Their involvement, that's a great word. They're playful, I love that word. Nature, good. They're wide and open. They're full of, did I see movement, or did I just want to see movement? And did I see involvement move? Right? They're friendly. What a great word that is. And there's fresh air. Good. Right? Those spaces are social spaces. Yes. A couple people have actually wrote it down there, but those spaces are social spaces, right? Majority of those spaces that you wrote and described are describing social spaces. And social spaces are very important to us, right? They're good for us. Socializing is good for our well-being. In fact, it's so good for our well-being that we need, in order to have a thriving sense of well-being, we need 6 hours of social interaction a day, right? Introverted personality types have more happy moments and less stressful moments when they spend at least 5 hours socializing a day. So those introverts that are, on the call, you only need 1 hour less than us ambiverts or extroverts on this presentation. It's also been found that the more social time in a person's day, the better the day, but up to a certain point, right? The greatest gain in mood was noticed when using 20 to 40% of awake time socially. And mood jumps considerably by meeting with one person, and then slight gains were made for each additional person. Ideal group size, if you can believe it, was 3 people, right? You didn't lose gains when 4th, 5th, and 6th person joined the group, but you just didn't get that many gains when those people joined as well. Look, the science tells us that socialization is important to us. Of all the species in the animal kingdom, humans possess the largest brains relative to body size, right? Scientists have proven that brain size directly correlates to the size of its social group. And you can conclude that our large brains evolved to prioritize human interaction. Our brains got bigger so we could have more social interaction. Matthew Lieberman, a neuroscientist from UCLA and author of Social, Why Our Brains Are Wired to Connect, makes the case that being socially connected is not just an artifact of a million years of evolution, but actually essential to our survival. His research has shown that even at rest, our brain defaults to a socialized state, right? Years of evolution have trained our resting brains to be best prepared to reactivate within a social context. We're ready to go and be social. If we're ready to go, we know that learning in these spaces we create space where learning can spread. That's the idea of creating these spaces, right? But how far do you think if learning can spread into a classroom, into a campus, right? How far do you think a feeling can spread, right? How far can an emotion spread? Certainly, how far do you think an emotion of happiness can spread? A lot of people think they could spread to the moon and back. That's awesome. Maybe to another person or two. Good. Okay. Yeah. So I will tell you that 3 of you are correct, right? Happiness has been proven, or 4 of you are correct now. Happiness has been proven to spread for 1 mile, right? The emotion of happiness. 2 scientists, James Fowler and Nicholas Christakis, looked at the dynamic spread of happiness in a large social network. And what they studied was a neighborhood for 20 years. They they studied about 5,000 individuals in a neighborhood and looked at, could happiness spread? Can this spread? And what they found was some really interesting stuff. One, that happiness can spread for a mile. The second thing that they found was when an individual becomes happy, that their social groups get benefits, right? And they looked at all these different social groups. They looked at friends, they looked at partners, spouses, they looked at siblings, and they looked at neighbors. And what they found was that if an individual is happy, that their friends have a 25% increase in their happiness. What they found was that if an individual is happy, that their partners or spouses has an 8% increase in their happiness. The least social group that got the bump was their partners and spouses. If an individual is happy, then their siblings got a 14% bump into their happiness, increase in their happiness. But the social group that got the most bump in their happiness was the neighbors, right? That indirect relationship got the biggest increase in their happiness, right? And they had a 3 degree of separation. The friend of a friend got a 10% bump, and the friend of a friend of a friend got a 5.6% bump, right? If we look at college and universities right now, they are neighborhoods. That we should be developing them as neighborhoods. Dorms, res halls, universities themselves are neighborhoods. They're compact little neighborhoods where happiness can spread. We need to design spaces where happiness can spread even more. Academic buildings are changing into these shared communities where the bio and the math and all those departments are mixing together, right? These university spaces are these shared spaces, and what everyone is craving to go back to. Look, campuses are places and not just a collection of facilities. Hopefully we can agree on that. And campuses are designed to bring people together, right? Social spaces are places that help us understand where we learn, work, and collaborate best. They're vital to serving students who possess a vast range of skills, interests, and learning preferences, right? They look different, though. They need to look different and not be the same, right? They're inherently dynamic. They're adaptive to the campus and culture. They need to be responsive. Social spaces need to be freeing, promoting a culture of choice, connection, and community, right? They need to be able to foster connection between people and work and places, and inviting, thinking and promoting creativity and encouraging new opportunities for people to reveal themselves in these spaces. When we connect the unconnected, information flows, allowing productive work and creativity to thrive. But social spaces that we've understood needs to look and feel different from one another. Social spaces are where people from across campus converge. They serve both to preserve a college and university's culture and spread it throughout the campus. It's where intersectional thinking and happy accidents happen. Right? It's one of the most things that we miss most about the office, about the campus, about the university, are these social spaces. Right? What are they? Here's a case study for you. Right? This is in Springfield, Massachusetts. They had a design problem. This was the Springfield College, right? The school had an attraction and retention problem. There was something that they had been studying. They were one of the reasons why they weren't gaining students, why they were losing students, is because they didn't have a gathering space. They didn't have a student center. They didn't have a space for students to socialize, right? So they had to solve it. They worked for 2 years with a design firm, with a manufacturer, with a dealer, with everybody, with the students, the faculty, and staff, to turn this building, their library, into this building, right? And they made a couple different things. They needed a 24/7 space. They needed space for movement to happen. So they removed 70% of the books, right? And turned the library into a learning commons. They put the 4 F's that I call them: food, fun, friends, and faculty into the building, right? Food on the first floor, fun on the first floor, faculty, food, fun, friends on the first floor, and spread throughout, and faculty spread throughout the building, right? On the first floor, you've got a cafe, you've got multiple different tables and chairs kind of spread throughout it. What you don't have on the first floor is power in the tables. And they did that design on purpose. So if you wanted to get power, you had to move all the way up, right? On the second floor and third floor, they use the smaller little nook areas to create these little smaller social areas. And someone keeps on writing it into the comments, but they did give daylight back to the students and took it away from the books, right? And they opened up they used walls to give it back to the faculty too. And they pushed the envelope. This is their teaching and learning center. This is their classroom of the future, right? And what's missing is there's no tables and chairs, right? They're starting to push the envelope and putting some social seating into the classroom to see how the students react to it. Because honestly, this is probably what the students are sitting in now. If they're in school on their phones, on their iPads, on their laptops, and now at home, they're not at a table and chair like they would be at a university now. So when they go back to school, they're going to be looking for this, right? So more of this is probably going to be what we're needing for the classrooms. Okay, that's the social spaces. That's strong interpersonal relationships. Let's talk about movement. Let's talk about a little bit of exercise and why that's important for happiness. When do you exercise? Who exercises in the morning? Who exercises in the afternoon? Who exercises at night? Who doesn't know what exercise is, like me? We're almost a split here. Let's see how this goes. We'll let this play out a little bit. Wow, this is almost an even split. Okay. All right, so there's no real majority on this, but we're pretty much split. All right, good for you for exercising. Great, right? But whenever you exercise, right, you are getting a mood benefit. What's the science say? The mood benefit says that 20 minutes of exercise gives you 12 hours of mood benefit, or gives you a 12-hour minute. So if you exercise in the morning, you're riding that mood benefit all day. If you exercise at night, you're riding that mood benefit while you dream at night, right? But get out there and exercise because you're riding the mood benefits. When this is the study, this is what the science says about the students that are exercising, right? The brains on the left sat quietly before taking an exam. The brains on the right got up and took a 20-minute walk before taking an exam. Who had the higher scores? Hopefully you're shouting at your computers, the ones on the right, right? But the question was that the research said was who had the more creative answers. And the ones that you should be shouting again was the brains on the right, the students on the right. And that's what the college and universities out, creativity, innovation, that's the envelope we want to start pushing, the more active brains. Okay, what's the average amount of daily steps taken during the pandemic? If we know that we're supposed to hit 10,000 on a daily basis, what do you think the average amount of daily steps taken during the pandemic is? Are we going up or down? What do you think? I'll tell you what I'm at right now. This will be your clue. I'm at 1746. That's your clue. Right? Yeah. So let's see if we can give you the right answer. Yeah, the average steps has dropped significantly during the pandemic, right? It's down to 1,500. Right? We're not moving around as much as we were. Right? Some of you are probably overachieving, and congratulations on that. I'm way down from where I need to be, but most of us get stuck in the office or stuck where we are. In fact, I don't know if anybody saw this from the Times. I'm going to try and do this real quick. But some college and university campuses actually banned, banned outdoor movement. University of Massachusetts has banned outdoor walks today, and the only way that the students can move on campus is to go get food, in order to prevent the spread of COVID-19, even though there's been no link to, even if they wear masks, right? So it's had actually a negative effect at the University of Massachusetts. Okay, but there's still hope for us. How many seconds of exercise can actually improve fitness? Science says now, according to a recent study. What do you think? How many seconds? If you didn't catch this, you've got hope. So good news for us who are down on our walking, right? The science actually says that micro or snacking exercise is good for us. That 20 seconds of exercise is actually good can improve our fitness. So we should be focusing on little micro movements of exercising. So 5 of you, you're right. 20 seconds of exercise is good for us, right? What's happening in exercising, right, is a couple things. And why is it good for us? And why is it making us happy? Well, chemically, it's making us happy because it's releasing neurochemicals, right? The hypothalamus and pituitary gland are releasing endorphins, right? And that has the same structure actually of morphine, right? But it's our natural painkillers, and it's involved in releasing and triggering a reward circuit and activating the opioid receptors in our brains and reducing discomfort, right? It gives a euphoric buzz. That's good, right? It helps reduce stress, right? Physical activity may help the brain cope even better with stress. Exercise has been found to boost self-esteem and to provide both a sleep aid and reduce anxiety and improve mood, right? Exercise actually helps us combat depression and boost physiological well-being. It's been linked to, if we do it at least 2 or 3 times a week, we can experience significant less depression, anger, distrust, and stress versus not doing it at all. And those who experience exercise at least twice a week reported higher levels of a sense of coherence, a stronger feeling, and social interaction than those who do it less frequently, right? What does it mean at college universities, right? How can we increase exercise at college universities? That's not just building, athletic centers, right? In the corporate world, they're starting to do it a little bit more. If you look at a building like this at Apple, right? They're building yoga studios. They're incorporating height adjustability. They're making the furniture move, at these spaces, right? They're building the buildings in circles, right, to encourage movement themselves. They're encouraging movement and meetings to be occurred across the forest that's in the center of these spaces, right? They're building these stuff and things. But what about in the academic center, right? Well, you need to focus on this. You need to focus on the greenways, right? You need to focus on, making these spaces points of pride on campus, taking away the driveways and the parking lots and pushing those as far away across the campus as possible. You have to build in some challenges along the way. It can't be just flat across the way. Imagine a biology student or a pre-med student on their way to their class, and they've got to cross this. Do you think their brain will be a little bit more activated as they get to their class? I think so, right? Challenges have to be built in. And remember what the 4 F's stand for? Yeah. Food, fun, friends, and faculty. Super important. Although festivals, films, falcons, and flutes would probably be very fun as well to put on campus, right? But fish tacos, I'm hungry as well, right? And you hopefully are having some lunch, right? But the 4 F's are super important along the greenways as well, and the blue ways along as well. Food, fun, friends, and faculty have to be easily accessible, okay? And we have to see play. When we see play, we do play. Right? We can't build the athletic centers far away because we don't do play, but the play has to be easily accessible to us, right? If we look at stuff like happening on campuses right now, they're building mini athletic centers and connecting them to academic buildings and making them accessible, right? Besides athletic centers, besides greenways and walkways, what other spaces on campus do you think you can add some movement to? Where do you want to put some movement? Nowhere? Parks, okay. Studios, the pub. More movement in the pub. Hallways. Okay, 2 spaces I see I want to put movement on. Yeah. I'll put some movement into class. Okay, a lot of spaces into classrooms. Good, because that's the space we want to put some movement into. We'll talk about that. classrooms are an easy space to put movement in, right? Most of the classrooms kind of look like this, right? But can classrooms start to have a little bit more movement? The easiest way to put some movement in is into classrooms. Casters, right? Put casters on the tables and chairs. Easiest way to do it, to give the students the freedom to go from a class like this or a movement like this to do some project-based learning like this. But what happens if I add movement on height, right? To go from 26 to 29 to 30, 36 to 42, allow them some choice of freedom and how they're sitting and where they're sitting and how that table moves. And can I still move the tables so they can do stuff like this? That's movement, right? Can I take the whiteboards off of the walls, right? And move them to the center of the spaces and let them divide up the class? Can I push the envelope even further, right? And allow for real movement in a classroom. We're talking about movement too, right? And someone said in workstations, but let's talk about height adjustability for a second, right? What percentage of the population can sit comfortably at a 29-inch high table, right? That their majority of our students and our faculty and staff are sitting at, right? And they're sitting at for an excessive periods of time. The average class in the US is over 90 minutes long, right? And they're at multiple classes a day. So the right answer to this is the first one, right? It's actually 5% of the population in the world can sit comfortably at a 29-inch high table, right? 5%, that's not a lot of people, right? So if we know that height adjustability is important and we start to design, we've been designing it into workstations, we've been designing it into offices, why aren't we designing it into classrooms? Why aren't we putting it into learning spaces even more? Why are we sticking students at one height at 29 inches high? Why aren't we using something like this for a height adjustable electric table that goes up and down to give students the ability to move if only 5% of the student population can sit comfortably at it? Why can't the table go below 29 inches for those that can't use it, like myself? I sit comfortably. I'm 5'9", 5'10" on a good day. Why can't I get that thing to 27 and a half, right? To give some movement into that classroom, but to give some height to those of you who want to have some height and movement in that classroom as well. Height adjustable tables in classrooms. Think about it. Okay. All right, last section. I'm going to speed up a little bit because I know no one's looking at his watch going, you promised them Q&A, Scott, and you've got one whole section to go here, right? But I'm going to get through this section, I promise, quickly. Okay. Architects and designers have a greater ability to improve public health than medical professionals. Hopefully you agree with this statement, right? Whether we like it or not, the built environment has a profound impact on human and ecological health and wellness. And when we like it or not, with knowledge comes great responsibility, right? We know this, right? We're at a moment in history where we have an amazing opportunity to recalibrate the impacts in both positive and negative impacts that buildings have on people, right? And we can do it through incorporating some of this, right? This push towards, bringing some of this in, bringing some of this biophilic design or biophilia into the space, right? Can we bring some of this and more of this into the space and into the spaces that we design, and certainly into the education world? Biophilia is super important, right? And it's been proven that it has, major impacts on our cognitive functioning, our psychological responses, and our physiological responses. The same stuff that we were talking about at the beginning of this, and it helps our mental agility, our memory. It helps our ability to alertness and attention and concentration, our emotion, our moods. Biophilia also has, in our physiological sense, direct effects on our musculoskeletal system, our respiratory system, our circadian systems, and our overall physical comfort, right? Biophilia matters. It can be done really easy, right? If we do 3 common approaches to biophilic design, right, by looking at the nature in the space and addressing the direct physical and physical presence of nature in the space, right? Whether it includes plant life, water and animals, breezes, sound, scents, and natural elements. If we look at natural analogs, right? The addressing organic or non-living and indirect evocations of nature, right? By using objects and materials, colors, shapes, sequences, and patterns found in nature's, all that stuff, we can bring it into the shape as into the space as well. Or in my favorite, if we start to evoke the nature of the space, right? Addressing the spatial configurations in nature. The idea of the innate and learned desire to be able to see beyond our immediate surroundings, this fascination with the slightly dangerous or unknown, the obscured views, right? This kind of almost phobia-inducing properties, right? These ideas. Can we start to bring this into the spaces more? Right. We know that biophilia, right? Good biophilic design draws from influential perspectives. It draws from health conditions, sociocultural norms, expectations, past experiences, frequency and duration, user experience, all that stuff, right? Biophilic design is just it must nurture this love of place and share it with those that are part of it, right? If I could give you a magic wand and you could wave it across a college or university campus, right, and you could increase creativity by 15% and give a boost of a higher level of well-being by 15% and increase productivity by 6%, would you do it, right? And hopefully you're shouting at your computer, yeah, we do it, right? You have that magic wand. And that magic wand is biophilia. And this is what the science is, what the data says about workplaces, right? And there's even more data that says it about the impact on learning spaces. And I won't go into the details because we're running out of time, but there's stuff that we can share with you after this from learning spaces that talks about the impact of that cites a year-long study of 2,000 classrooms that looks at the impact of daylight. The study by the American Horticultural Society that compared two classrooms, one that had a plant in it and one that didn't, right? And the impact that one plant in the classroom had on the rating of the course, the rating of the lecturer, and the grades that the students received in it. Or the report by Human Spaces that looked at the optimization of daylight alone that increased the average of the student turnout, the test scores, and the speed of which they were learning, all from daylight, right? Biophilia matters. And it can look like all of this stuff. It can look like just by putting chairs outside. It can look like by using materials like they did at Yale and New Haven and geometric forms. It can look like the classroom in Payadin in Thailand. It can look like the University of Maryland's Garden of Reflection and Remembrance. It can look like what they're doing at the University of Texas by using full height glazing and rooms surrounded by daylight and trees and grass from the outside. It can look like what they're doing at the Innovation Center at the Oregon State University, or what they're doing on the inside, right? Large windows to allow daylight in, classrooms built underneath stairs and on top of stairs. We're talking about the nature of the space and in the space, and ceilings shaped to look like the crafting of stone. All that stuff is part of biophilic design, and it's not green. It's not anything that has to be green, right? Okay, wrapping this stuff up real quick. Do you know what the UN 17 Sustainable Development Goals are? I'm gonna tie this into well very quickly. Those are yes, no, sort of. Okay, majority of you are coming in at no, which means we've got some homework to do, which is good. If you haven't seen the image, they look like this, right? And maybe you're looking at it on your phone. But if you haven't seen these before, or you haven't seen my my bracelet that I wear around, that's part of the SDGs. And what does it mean? What do they tie in? They look like this, right? The UN SDGs were created in 2015 with goals for 2030. They were adopted unanimously by the UN, right? With 169 specific measurable targets, right? With a wide range of independent social, economic, and environmental issues, ranging from poverty to tackling climate change. right? And the SDGs call to action for countries and institutions and design firms and manufacturers, right, to partner together to build a more equitable society and a flourishing planet. What does it all mean? Well, goal number 3 is good health and well-being, right? And goal number 3 really targets biophilic design and all this other stuff that we're talking about today. And goal number 3 is directly linked to well version 2 and the UN SDGs. Well version 2, if you haven't looked at well version 2, the well building standard is revolutionizing the way people think about buildings, right? It explores how design, operations, and behaviors within a place where we live, work, play, learn, collaborate are optimized, and how it affects human behavior, good health, and well-being. Version 2 builds upon pioneering the foundations of well version 1, and it's out now, out of pilot, right? It draws on community of end users and practitioners, and from health and building researchers and experts from around the world, with one main goal in developing version 2 to drive equity to the architecture of the standard, right? The IWBI approached the goal with globalization as its forefront, and looking through a standard of localization, though, globalization through localization, taking into consideration regional health concerns, cultural norms, market realities in this new version, right? It's dynamic too, and it's constantly changing, just like the ways to get to the goal. Right? Version 2 is built on a system that can continuously learn, evolve, improve, and moving away from its fixed scores. Version 2 directly links through the 17 SDGs, right? And they use it as their framework. And it's not just understanding, they're also, the way that it looks together is by using their 10, not 7 concepts, right? And I'm just kind of putting a rush on this to get to the end because I know you're gonna, okay, but if you're interested in this and want to dive a little bit deeper, please engage us a little bit more. We can get into this. But the well version 2 uses 10 concepts to get into breaking from its normal 7. In regards to biophilic design, and what you'll see for all these 10 concepts, if you look here, the SDGs are linked to all of the concepts, all of the preconditions, and all of the optimizations. They're linked directly to it. For biophilic design, there is a direct link from light and a precondition and optimization to literally access to nature as a precondition and an optimization, right? And then our good friend mental health promotion as a precondition now moving forward is a direct link to an SDG. In the good health and well-being alone, there are all of these categories, optimizations, and preconditions that this one goal links directly to. So if you have a college or university that is going after UN SDGs and designing for UN SDGs, which they should be and will be moving forward, this is an easy link for you moving forward as a design firm. UN SDGs are the future of design. They are the future of how students, faculty, and staff will be looking forward, and how we'll be able to talk to one another about it, right? And well helps us communicate with one another about it. All right, that's a very short portion of the UN SDGs. I'm sorry I had to rush that through, but I know Nolan's freaking out right now that I'm not giving you time for Q&A, but I will. Look, I'm gonna wrap it up with this. Look, purposely designed physical spaces matter in making a positive impact on the campus community, and these are the facts. But as designers, engineers, builders, operators, owners of buildings, if we have you on this call, right, we are caretakers. Right? We have an obligation to create spaces that move us in the direction towards health and better physical health and better mental health. We can create spaces that inspire, that are inclusive, that allow us to flourish, and spaces that help us become happier and healthier people, right? And we can do that by creating more social spaces, more spaces with movement, and more spaces with nature in them, okay? All right, that's it. I've ended at 4 o'clock. Thank you for your time. I'll stay on for questions. Please, if you're around, please feel free to ask any questions if you want. I'll kick it over. But thank you very much for your time. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Fantastic presentation. Great information there. Great information. I've got a few questions as people are thinking to themselves the questions they'd like to ask. I've got a couple that popped up through the presentation. For those of you that didn't hear at the beginning, there was a question about if this presentation is being recorded. It is, and it will be available within 72 hours. It can be found at chaseoffice.ca/events on our events section, and you can just set a request next to this titled CEU presentation, and we'll send you a link to it. We've got another question is here. This was related to the mental illness stats that you shared. And the question was, how do these statistics of students compare to the general population? Is it better or worse? I don't know, Scott, if you happen to know the answer to that question.
Oh, I haven't looked at the general population. I've been focused on looking at students and faculty and staff. I don't know how we saw in the Gallup poll, and the Gallup information was about the general population, right? And I guess we saw a spiking in sadness and a spiking in that sort of thing. So we know it's coming. I don't think it's as drastic as it is with the students and the faculty and staff. I think that's super hyper focused on that, but I think the Gallup would probably give us our deepest clue towards that.
Okay, and another question about the Gallup poll. Did you know if they do that same line of questioning every year? Is it the same thing, or was that a random study they did?
No, it's every year. They do their happiness and their positivity and negativity index every year.
Okay, does anybody have any questions that come up they'd like to ask? You can take yourself off mute and feel free to speak up.
There was one in the chat. I think she's actually left already, but I'm kind of curious about this. She's in facilities at a university. The battle between classroom movement and flexibility is always capacity. Most universities need to keep room capacity high, which makes the flexibility difficult. Comments?
From me, or you want that from the audience?
Yeah.
I think we will certainly be seeing a shift moving forward. Are we going to be building 500, 600 person lecture halls moving forward now that we're being able to do this, right? Or being able to take webinars and podcasts and changing the pedagogy? Should those be turned into maker spaces or creating spaces and seeing what happens to those students? That is going to change it. The more flexible you have the furniture, if it can flip and nest and turn, and the more your professors, you can teach your professors on how to use that furniture, right? And to get them to be comfortable using that. With something that we've run into, we did I think it was Brown University, right? We installed one of their teaching classrooms, and it had flip and nest tables. It had tables of different heights. It had all this stuff on it. And for the first semester, nobody did anything with it. Nobody moved the furniture. So we went into the space and we put posters up on the wall, and we put around it, and then all of a sudden the furniture started to move, right? But it was just kind of, you had to remind people that this stuff could do what it was meant to do, right? And I think you have to make it visible. You have to come up with a plan, right? Is there somebody that's going to go in there and reset it every time? Is that the professor's responsibility? Is that the building's responsibility? So it's a good question. It's going to change, certainly with post-pandemic.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from the group? Quick look here to see if anybody's speaking while muted. Nope, it looks like that's it. Scott, thank you so much for joining. And a reminder, our next presentation is listed on the chaseoffice.ca. We'll continue to do these twice a month. Thank you so much for attending, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Scott. That was great.
Yeah.